there, welcome back to the third lesson here. I'm Mrs. B, and if you stay tuned, I'll show you how to create an Impressionist style artwork, teach you all about Claude Monet and other Impressionist artists, and I'll show you step by step how to make something just like this. So before we get into our activity today, first I wanted to talk to you about the artist Claude Monet, and specifically I wanted to have a chat about this artwork here. This artwork is one of many in his Waterlilies series, but this one, even though very small here, is actually massive. It takes up an entire room. And this one was created later on in his life, and I love it for two reasons. Firstly, number one, I love Impressionism. Impressionism was started by Claude Monet along with a few other French artists, and the idea was to create an artwork that lacked detail, and it used wispy sort of lines, beautiful colours, was just to give you an idea or an impression of what was happening in front of them. You can see why it was called Impressionism. When Claude Monet first introduced Impressionism as a style, art critics actually didn't like his work because they said, you need to wear glasses or you're going a bit blind, your artwork lacks detail. And so he was actually looked down upon in the art world at the beginning of the style when he introduced it. Later on it became a lot more popular, and other artists such as Degas, Renior, Monet and a list of others incorporated this style as well, and you'll be able to see an array of French Impressionism if you have a look online. In Australia, they actually brought in Impressionism as well through the likes of Fredrick McCubbin, Streeton. However, the artwork looks very, very different because, as you can probably imagine, the Australian landscape looks very, very different to that of what was in front of Monet in France. Now, the second reason I love this artwork is because it has a sense of irony to it. This one that I showed you was actually created later in Monet's life. And this is at a time when he actually was going blind. He had cataracts in his eyes and he couldn't see very well. He was just doing what he knew without being able to see. And so even though people at the start of Impressionism said, you're blind, Claude Monet, he wasn't at the time, but he actually began to be later in his life. And he created this artwork even though he couldn't see very well. Today what you'll need is a canvas. Now you can use paper, but because we're using quite a lot of paint, having a thicker base is actually going to be recommended. I've painted and primed the back with a dark colour. However, you don't have to do this. You can just leave it white if you prefer. Now the equipment we'll be using for today's activity, as I said, a canvas. You'll need some masking tape, however this is just an optional extra. You'll need a paintbrush and some paint. Now I have some professional paint here, but you don't need to use such good quality. Any poster paint from Kmart or anything like this will work well. For the first step, and this is the optional step, what I'm doing is just covering my canvas here with some masking tape in the shape of a bridge, just like Monet's Japanese bridge in his Waterlily artworks. This is a bit tricky. You kind of just need to use small pieces of masking tape, and if you have a young child, you'll probably need to do this part for them. However, as I said, this part is optional, so if you don't want the bridge in your Impressionist artwork, you don't have to. This is just something to make it look a little bit like Claude Monet's artwork. So the next step is literally just blobbing some paint onto the canvas here. Normally I would definitely use a palette, but actually having the paint on the canvas makes it work really well. Now the colours I'm using are very similar to one another, so that when we combine them, they're not just going to end up a big gross brown mess.
we're actually using colours that will blend nicely together. We want a bit of paint throughout the whole canvas. You do need to work quickly. We don't want this paint to dry. Put it on top of the masking tape as well. You don't have to do spots. You can be a little bit more messy like this. White looks really good, so I usually go quite a lot of white. There we go. So once you have quite a bit of paint on top of your canvas, what you're going to do is use sort of a side to side small strokey motion to start to cover the entire canvas. Can you see like this? And we're sort of letting the colours combine with each other, but don't overwork it. If you keep going like this too much, the colours are going to mix. And the idea is sort of to leave the colours separate, but we want them to sort of play with each other a little bit. The colours look really beautiful. You can see that the paint's quite thick. That's okay. It just takes a while to dry. If you want to wash your brush, you can, but you probably don't really need to. I've probably used a little bit too much paint, so maybe for you guys to learn from my mistake, just use a little bit less when it comes to putting the paint on the canvas. There you have it so far. We'll let that dry, probably for a good day before moving on to the next step.
So it is as easy as that. I found I did use way too much paint, which made it really hard to take off some of the masking tape that I did. So please maybe just make sure you use less paint when it comes to putting the paint on the canvas, so then you won't have such a hard time with this bit. You can see it just looks like Claude Monet's beautiful bridge, and the water lilies under there with the blues and the pinks and things like that coming out in the Impressionist wispy kind of style. My 5-year-old daughter also had a go with this task, and she did something similar, a little bit more abstract, but she chose to put her masking tape in sort of straight lines like this and paint over the top. So you could also choose to do that if you'd prefer. I hope you enjoyed the lesson today, and please make sure you like, comment and subscribe to the Artlife YouTube channel for more lessons in the future.